Lord, you come to us in so many different ways and so many different possibilities throughout our week. And as we come to you, let us be mindful of who you are. For you were not in the earthquake. You were not in the cloud. You were not in the bright lights. You were not in the excitement. You were not in the triumph. You're not in the safety. You are with us. As we continue to celebrate this Advent of Emmanuel, let us remember that you are with us. And that is all we need. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh. Melt and mold, fill, use. Let us see you in the still small voice. Let it always be about bringing you praise. And let us follow in your way. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So, the last song is actually not Isaiah, but it is Isaiah, because the entire beginning of Isaiah is that song. And it's important for us to understand that as we look at Isaiah 9, we have to see what is going on with Isaiah and understand why he is where he is at in relationship to giving us this new prophecy that is coming out of the 9th chapter of Isaiah. And so he says in Isaiah 6, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphims, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their face, with 2 wings they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphims flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go and tell his people. It's an incredible story, it's an incredible picture of what he is getting him prepared for. And what he prepares him for is a birth announcement. That's what he prepares him for. It's a birth announcement. So you can look at Isaiah, and you can look at the scripture that we're talking about this morning. Oh, that's some funky paper. Did you do something special with the printer? I got some funky paper here. It just blew my mind. I didn't look at that this morning. I just printed it and brought it, and there it is. So I've got this nice tan paper. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about this morning, but Jeannie understands. So, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Okay? So those are the names. It's a birth announcement. And Isaiah is the prophet that is sent to give the announcement. He is here to say, hey, something's coming. Something big's coming. We're going to send you a son. And this son is going to take on all the issues of the world. He's going to be a wonderful counselor. He's going to be a mighty God. He's going to be an everlasting Father. He's going to be a Prince of Peace. And this morning we're going to talk about mighty God. Because I think we have a problem with this mighty God thing. Number one, I want you to know that in this birth announcement, he is saying a child is going to be born. You've read that. I've read that. It's no big deal, right? So the question is, what are your expectations of the child? What are your expectations of the child? Now, I say that with absolute all honesty. What are the expectations of this child? The reason I say that is because many of us in here have had children. And if you've had a child, don't tell me that you did not have expectations. It's one thing to sit around and talk with other parents and say, well, I never want to put any expectations on my children. Well, that's just bull. I mean, you can talk about that. Sounds good standing in front of the counselor, but that's really not the truth. Okay? No, we never put any wild expectations on. Oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You expect your child to learn to pee in a potty. I mean, you got to start with the basics, right? You don't want a 16-year-old that still is wearing diapers. You don't. That's the expectations. Remember, all of this, you haven't seen the child. You don't know what the child's going to look like. You don't know the physical capabilities of the child yet, especially at this time. Now we do. Now, we can selectively have abortions because we can look in there and say, oh, look at that. I don't like that. Let's do something else. Okay? Sad, isn't it? But it's true. And so, but then, no, for most of us, we looked in there, we saw something move, said, wow, that's cool, and we're going to have that. In our life, we had a doctor that said, well, it's got this little enzyme here. Not really sure. Could be something. We don't know. And we said, doesn't matter, right? It's ours. Okay? I mean, it puts you in that fear spot for a minute. You're like, what? We're going to have something wrong? Well, you could. I mean, what would it have been like if Isaiah would have said to the people, we've got this baby coming. He's going to be a wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father. He's going to be the Prince of Peace. The government's going to be on his shoulders. Now, he may be dumb as a bucket. But that's what's going to happen. Yeah. This is not a political statement. But you know what I'm thinking. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell. We don't know what's going to happen here. We just know that something's happening. We expect things. What do you expect? You see, I think that's the problem that we've gotten into in Christianity, is we have started to expect certain things from our wonderful counselor and mighty God. We have decided what this is going to be. And I think as parents, we have every right to expect our child to pee in a potty. I do. I believe that. I believe as parents we have every right to have our child sit at the table, eat, learn to eat with utensils, because you have an opposable thumb. You learn to eat with utensils, and to not throw food all around the room. I expect that. I expect that. Those are things I expect. Now, I expect my children to learn to dress themselves. I understand I've got a responsibility for a certain time to get them dressed. Make sure that they leave the house appropriately. But I expect after a while that my children should learn to put their clothes on and leave the house appropriately. See, it's all these simple expectations. So for us to sit around and say, well, we don't ever put any expectations on our children, that's bull. And the same thing goes with our God. What expectations do you have of our God? What is it? So, again, only preach where I'm living. This week, been quite a life. All right? So, Didn't work at Mitch's as much this week. I mean, I worked there several days, but still not as much because going different places, doing different things, supporting my son, making sure we get people where they're supposed to be. I love to go coach. I still enjoy that. I especially love it when I don't have to be there every day. I mean, coaching, that's fun. It's like just eating the cake. At the end. Okay, we have a birthday, you got to go buy a present, you got to do, that's all the stuff you don't like doing. But going and having cake and ice cream, I'm in. Let's go. So that's what we do. That's what I get to do now. I just drive a bus, show up, coach, leave, go home. I don't have to think about anything else. I don't have to worry about the parents. And even to the point of, sometimes Joshua will come in, he'll say, hey, I mean, look here, I got this text message from this blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. Yep, that's you. And handle that, boy. You just do it. There you go.
Speaking here comes the bus.
Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun to be a head coach? Woo! Yeah. Yeah, isn't that great? And I don't treat him quite that tough, but at the same time, he's got to make the call. I don't. And so it's beautiful. After the state championship game, just last night, he hadn't even gotten home yet. He hadn't got back to the field house yet. And I'm not talking about Joshua. I'm talking about the head coach of the Carl Albert Titans, Mike Dunn. And so before he even got back to the field house, because I knew he was driving, I sent him a text. I said, congratulations. You'll always remember the first one. There's something special about that first one. Because I've had 3 of my own as a head coach. So I've had 9. I thought of it this morning as I was kind of going back over my notes and preparing. I've had 9 state championships that I've actually been involved in on a coaching staff now, because I actually just because I'm the announcer up in the booth, I still get to be called on the coaching staff. It's kind of cool. And so I've had 9 state championships now at Carl Albert, 3 of my own as a head coach. So I sent him that note and said, hey, congratulations, great job. It's wonderful that you'll always remember the first one. And then at the end of it, I wrote, and if you've ever coached, you'll appreciate this. I wrote at the end, the last line, I said, because you have to start on the other one tomorrow. Which is true. You know why it's true? Because that's the expectation. If you're not a winner, you're a loser. Think about that. What kind of expectation is that? Well, it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. I can't remember the comedian's name. I think it was Jerry Seinfeld. Said, when you're coming in at the Olympics and you reach for the wall and you touch and you are 1/100th of a second behind the gold medalist, you're the first loser. You're not the silver medalist, you're the first loser. I mean, it must be nice to be the first loser, because at least you weren't the last loser. So what kind of expectations are you putting on God? Well, I want you to know that you need to hear the name. Okay? You've got to hear the name. All right? Last week was Wonderful Counselor. This week is Mighty God. In Hebrew, it's called El Gibor. I want you to say that. El Gibor. G-I-B-B-O-R is the way it's done in English. El Gibor, meaning mighty God. All right? Emmanuel means God with us. Emmanuel. Every time you say El, talking about God. So there's lots of L's in the Bible. Okay? So we've got this El Gibor. Okay? This mighty God. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Isaiah does it, and he's saying, we have a mighty God. We have a mighty God. I don't know what you think mighty is. Okay? Because some people would talk about something very, very small. Okay? I don't know if you've ever recognized it, but a lot of times people will say, well, he's not very big, but he's mighty. Have you ever heard that statement? And you're talking about something that's little. Not very big, but he's mighty. So he's got strength. He's just not that big. I love that concept. Do you know where we get that from? A 1950s comic. That's where you get that from. That's where you get the statement. Well, he's not very big, but he's mighty. You know who you're talking about? Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse. you know, the truth is, most of us learned the word mighty from something like Mighty Mouse. Here I come.
Thank you.
Here I come to save the day. It's a little mouse with a cape on. It's just incredible. And that's where we learn the word mighty. And so we get this picture in our head. Well, you know, I mean, he's not much, but he's mighty. Have you ever really kind of drawn together in your head when we hear wonderful counselor? That's kind of impressive. Mighty God? I don't know. I don't know how impressive that is to you. So what are your expectations? What are your expectations of a mighty God? Now, he didn't say a mighty God. Okay? Isaiah's better than I am. He didn't put a mighty God. He didn't put a mighty God. He said, wonderful counselor, comma, mighty God. Meaning, mighty God. Not one of many gods, not the mightiest of gods, but mighty God. The God. That is mighty. And so, this child is going to arrive on the scene in this incredibly unexpected way, but not spectacular. Just comes like every other child. Just, you know, the last moment, boom, there he is. And so, but he's going to be a mighty God. He's going to be God with skin. Now, that might not mean that much to you, and I know that you've heard that many, many times before. That, well, you know, Jesus is God with skin on him. I know, I've even said that before, and other people have preached that before. But one of the things I think we fail to do is actually recognize that God with skin is here. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Everything that was created through him. And so John recognizes that. And he says, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. God with us. Not a God with us, God with us. And I keep saying that because we're going to get to that in a minute, because I think we've got a bad expectation and a bad misrepresentation of who mighty God is. And so, God with us. The Creator with us. The one who breathes life into you with us. This is my pause for effect. Okay? And the reason I say that is because we can hear that all day long. What difference does it make? What difference does it make? Yesterday I posed a question to Mike Goff. He's my color commentator, and he's just my friend, and we love to talk to each other on the broadcast. That's the truth. That's what he is. And so I read off all of these wonderful attributes of Carl Albert High School football, and one of the things that we struggle with at Carl Albert High School is expectations. And you may think that sounds kind of silly, but one of the things we struggle with is expectations. The expectations at Carl Albert High School are you win the championship. If you don't win the championship, we don't talk to you. We ignore you. We act like you didn't exist. You can argue with me, but you haven't been in the places I've been. You haven't been behind the door. You haven't been in places where you literally, if you don't win the championship, you're just another group somewhere in the world. When we talk about home of champions, the reason I'm bringing this out is because, and this is not a message about Carl Albert High School, but I think most of us struggle with this same thing. If you don't win a championship, you just kind of fall away into obscurity. It's not that we don't come watch your games. It's not that we don't, know that you're there. It's not that we don't, get you a bus. I mean, they're not going to leave you like on the parking lot if you don't win championships. But if you don't win a championship, you're really just, Now you win championships, you're the cream of the crop till the next day. That's why I said what I said to Mike Dunn. You're the man all year long, building up. Looks like, oh yeah, look, playoff 1, playoff 2, playoff 3, state championship. Boom! Next day, we're going to enjoy that until the rings get in. We're going to have a little ring celebration. We're going to, you have no idea. I actually asked Kelly this morning, what time did you get out of there? Well, she had a reason to get out of there. She had to go see her mother, so we got out of there. I don't know what time they got out of there. I'm guessing probably 9 o'clock. So there was another 2-hour celebration. Another 2-hour celebration that went on at Carl Albert High School Fieldhouse last night. That unless you're, on the in crowd, you wouldn't even know about. You really wouldn't even know about. Unless you're on the in crowd. If you're on the in crowd, then you go get your picture taken with the gold ball. Yeah, there you go. See, Kelly, Kelly graduated like 900 years ago. She's like, yeah! Yeah. Woo! There we go. Gold ball. It's life. Gold ball is life.
We don't even have room for it.
Yeah, see? It's how many we won. It's because of the expectation. The best picture I saw yesterday. Remember, I'm leading you up. I'm trying to get you to go in with me here. The best picture I saw yesterday was the gold ball wearing a beanie, strapped into the back seat of a Suburban on its way home. The gold ball has its own life.
It's the truth.
You see, the expectation is you're going to be a winner or you're going to be a loser. I want you to know, I think you and I do that with God every day. Sometimes we're standing in the clouds and we're watching God just pass right through us. Oh, that's great. That's incredible. Wonderful moment. Next day. Where are you, God? Where are you? Either God was a winner that day or he was a loser. Why is that? Why is that? God is with us. God is with us. And I'm not talking about like your husband or your wife. No, God is with us. God is enduring with us. God is loving our joys. God is excited about our excitement. God is mourning with us in our mourning. God is with us. That, my friends, is a mighty God. Let me tell you what we've done. What we've done is we've taken God out of heaven, we brought him down here, and instead of us being made in his image, we make him in ours. I think it was Mark Twain that actually said that first. I know that might sound a little bit crazy, but I think it was Mark Twain that actually said that first. He said, from the point that God said, I made you in my image, from that point on, we have been making God in our image ever since. Quit trying to understand. You see, I think it's very important that we go back and look at last week and ask the question, what does wonderful counselor really mean? The word wonderful means can't understand it. Can't understand it. Last week I used the description or the I can't even think of what I'm trying to say. Last week I used the term about the Grand Canyon. I have not seen the Grand Canyon, but I've heard many people that say they would stand on the rim of the Grand Canyon and say, it's too incredible. I can't even understand this. It's so magnificent. All I can think of is Chevy Chase and Christmas Vacation, or I think it was that sort of was, where he looked over because they were in a hurry. And he said, "Yep, okay, let's go." He got in the car and left. I mean, I get that, but what really goes on here is the word wonderful means I can't understand. And see, that's the problem, is we as people try to make God understandable. You can't understand it. And so in our attempt to try to make God understandable, we attempt to make God in our image instead of being in his image. And so we bring him down, and we drag him down to places that instead of the Word becoming flesh that dwells among us, we say, well, why doesn't the Word just hang around? We don't want the Word to be something that we have to care for. We just want the Word to kind of hang around. But you know what? God can't come to us without us paying attention. You don't have a child that's born and you just say, oh, isn't that cool? I don't have to take care of it. I don't have to do anything. No, you do. We have a responsibility. We have to do something with this. If we don't do something with this infant, it will die. Isn't it amazing that God was so brilliant that he said, I'm going to send you something that you have to care for. And yet churches throughout life have told you, oh no, oh, God is there for you. God is there for you. God is always there for you. Well, in reality, yes, God is there for you, but you have a responsibility. You can't just say, God, you know what we do? We say, where are you? That's how we have learned to summon God. Where are you, God? Even David did this same thing. You see, it's not just us. We talk about the people in the Bible as though they were something different than you and I. You and I are just like the people in the Bible. David looks up. He bends his knee. He looks to the sky. He says, where are you, God? Because he's trying to create God in his image. Is he really a man after God's own heart? That's what we say about David. And so the question is, are you a person after God's own heart? Or are you wanting God to have your heart? You see, that's one of the reasons we talk about it in terms of having Christ come into our heart. Doesn't that sound a little selfish? Shouldn't we be saying, Christ, replace my heart with yours? Not you come into me as much as me come into you. Your heart is what's important. My heart is finite. Your heart is infinite. Your world is everlasting. My world is not. So what does it really look like? What does it really look like to want a mighty God? So, when you see the Lord in your midst, remember that He is El Gabor, who came to meet us in our greatest need. He is God with us. So the baby that was born in Bethlehem was God in the flesh, and He came to this earth with a specific mission. A specific mission. I wonder what it would look like if we really got on His page. If we got on the page of His mission. So, Luke 19:10. For the Son of God came to seek and to save the lost. He came to seek and to save the lost. God didn't sit back on His throne and say, when you guys get around to it, come to me. I wonder how many of us would ever have come to God if God were sitting on the throne saying, you all come up here. No. No, he came to seek and to save the lost. He did not wait for us to pull ourselves out of the pit. He didn't wait for us to wake up and come to our senses. He is the God, the mighty God who comes to us. He came to seek and to save the lost, and that's exactly what He did. So that's why I say that Jesus is the mighty God who meets us in our greatest need. One of the problems that we have is this. When we are trying to figure out who this mighty God is, I have to ask myself the question, how do I do that? How do I figure out who the mighty God is? Well, one of the things that I have a tendency to do is I look at other gods. In other words, for me to figure out who God really is, I have to deal with all the other gods that I've created. Because I already told you, I think that's what we do. We create God in our image. And so, what are the other gods that we've created? Are they doing what God sent His Son for? Are they seeking and saving the lost? And that's what Luke says. Luke says He created Him to seek and save the lost. And so, are the other gods that I have created seeking and saving the lost? Are they mighty enough to be the God that Isaiah is talking about? And so I have to look at some of those things, and I have to say, in Deuteronomy 10:17 it says, "For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes." He's not just a God, He is the God. He is the Lord of lords. And so, these names of God have been changed year after year after year in my life and in yours. Please don't be offended when I say this. The names of God have been changed. Names like power. Have you ever tried to make power your God? If you hadn't, I don't think you're living. Because I think there's a time in all of us, and it might have been when you were 14. It might have been when you were 25. It might have been when you were 50. There was a point that you said, "I'm pretty dang powerful. I can do this. I got this." Have you ever said in your life before, "You know what? I'm living a pretty good life"? Sure you have. Everyone has. There's been a moment in time you've thought, "I'm on top of the world." So, power became your God. What about this? What about influence? Has influence become your God? Let me tell you something, and I love you. I cannot tell you how well this worked out in regard to writing this sermon this week that Carl Albert actually won, because it just fits so many things. You know what you get when you actually win a state championship at Carl Albert? Influence. Influence. I sat last night for about 20 minutes and looked through the Twitter feeds of the high school football players, because I have a burner account on Twitter. I really don't, but it's kind of what it feels like. I have my New Wine account. Leonard, you lost it there. I have my New Wine account, which is me, and I do all that. But then I also have CA on the air. And CA on the air is the fact that I do play-by-play, and so a lot of those guys have followed CA on the air. A lot of the football players, and you know what? You can guess, right? You can guess what their main thing was yesterday. I'm now a state champion. Oh man, that is on top of the stinking world. They're 17. They're 17. Some are 15, 16. A couple of them are 18. But still, they think, see, it's easy to talk about somebody else. That's what's so much fun about this. They think that they can walk into a job interview sometime and say, I want a state championship at Carl Albert. Exactly. There are some places you could walk into and say, I want a state championship at Carl Albert, and they'd say, where's Carl Albert?
You want fries with that?
Yeah, exactly. But they think they have influence because they've done something. And I think we do the same thing with God. There are days in our lives that God has incredible amounts of influence. because he's done something for us. And so we're just like, yes, God, come on, man. I'll give you anything you want. But when he doesn't show up, well,
Where are you?
you must be a golfer. Golf's never won a state championship.
They got runner-up.
Yeah, well, it's not the ball. I'm telling you.
First loser.
First loser. There you go. Okay, what about this? Have you ever named your God this? You've named him possibly power, possibly influence, possibly status. Have you ever named your God sex? I said, don't be offended. Have you ever named your God sex? Hey, I'm telling you right now, there's a bunch of 14 through 30-year-old, and some of them don't get out of it until they're 70, when their body breaks down, that is their goal. That is their God. You think it's not? Do a little research online and find out how many people are now doing testosterone therapy. Do a little research online. Find out how much the porn industry gets. Day after day after day after day. The porn industry right now can rival the government. You think their sex is not part of somebody's God life? Oh yeah, it is. How about relationships, opportunities? How about substance abuse? How about all the things that we believe are going to deliver us? Because that is what God is here to do, is to deliver us. And so we've been looking and looking and looking and looking and looking and trying to make every little thing another God that will deliver us. Deliver you from what? Well, from this loneliness, from this agony, from this pain, from this world. Maybe we could translate it in a different way. Maybe you'll understand it if I say it this way. By looking to those things to satisfy the longings of our heart, maybe we could look at what would it look like if Jesus, the mighty one, El Gabor, in the face of saying, you're not enough, you're not strong enough, you're not mighty enough, you can't pull me out of this hole that I'm in, you don't satisfy enough, so I'm going to go find something that does. You see, I think that's what we do. We have a tendency to say, if God can't do it, we're going to go find something that will. And so, many of us run into this other part. If we can't get something else to fulfill us, then we will move to the church, because the church is also very influential, and it's very mighty and very powerful, and it always has been. And so we will take God, and we will make a caricature of God that fits our need. You know what a caricature is, right? Okay. Caricature is something that looks kind of like it, but probably isn't it. All right? Sometimes it can be a funny caricature. Some other times it can be not so funny caricature. It can be making fun. And so sometimes what we do is we say the character of Jesus that we want, that suits our need, is a life coach. It's a life coach. That's what I need. I need a life coach. I need somebody that will give me some good, pithy sayings every single day, make me feel better. Get me on the right track. Get me going in the right way. Make sure I'm doing the right thing. I need a coach. I need a life coach. I waited until I was sure, until I was confident in the fact that Coach Norman, I remember I'm Coach K, he's Coach Norman. I remember, I waited, I was confident, I was sure that Coach Norman would be the head coach of swimming. I waited, and I knew it was going to come. Now, as I watch him come home, devastated sometimes, upset, angry, frustrated, insecure, neurotic, emotional, I'm like, oh God, what did I do? Well, it's because the caricature of what I thought is not what is. I thought we were going to have a pool. It's kind of hard to be a swim team without a pool. It's a little tough. A little difficult. And so I created this character thinking, okay, maybe, okay, so now you're not a swim coach, you're a life coach. You're just a life coach, 65 kids. Tell them how great they're doing. I mean, Dina and Craig, what you said this morning, I mean, it's right here. It's on page 4. It's awesome. It's awesome the influence that he has over these 65 kids. It's awesome the influence that I had over the 65 kids. It's wonderful. But in reality, you know where we struggle? We're supposed to be swimming. Life coaching only can go so far. It can't deliver me to a pool. So then I have to determine what's the real goal. Maybe some of you have taken this person that you call Jesus, this mighty God, and you said, maybe Jesus is more like a Lucky Charm. Okay, not a life coach, now he's a Lucky Charm. Just maybe somebody thinks that having a cross around your neck or on your rearview mirror, that therefore life is going to be smooth sailing. But that's not Jesus the mighty God. That's Jesus the Lucky Charm. We made the character. You're Jesus the Lucky Charm. Or maybe, since it's Advent, maybe we have Jesus Claus. In other words, we make a list of what we want, we give him a shout out at Christmas time, because we're pretty good, and we have this view of Jesus that will do nothing but disappoint you. Because Jesus is not the lottery. Remember, I'm not talking about the eternal, I'm talking about we have brought God down to us and we're creating God in our image. You want a mighty God? You want a mighty God? You want a God that is nothing but power and might? Do you really want that? I mean, it's easy to sit in church and talk about that. Do you want a God that's really power and might? Because if you want that God, you're going to want a God that is going to fight your battles. And as Mitch said this morning, you're going to want a God that says to you, sit down, shut up, and let me handle this. You know what? We really like mighty people until they tell us the truth. Then we don't like them that much. Some of the greatest people I've known were mighty until they crossed me. Then I just felt like they were beating the crap out of me. Do you really want a mighty God? I do. I want to sit down. I want to be quiet. I want to let God fight the battles. It may not be the way that I expect it to be. It may not have the outcome that I expect. It may not be in the life that I feel like I deserve. It may not look like what I have written down on paper. It may not be the video that looks like a Hallmark movie channel that always comes out good in the end an hour and 30 minutes later. But it will be a mighty God that is doing mighty things in my life, whether I'm with him or against him. You really want a mighty God? Then you have to sit mightily on your knees. When we come face to face with the fact that Jesus is a mighty God, he's not only worthy of worship, he's worthy of our surrender. Do you know what it looks like to surrender to a mighty God? To admit, I don't have it. I'm not going to have it. I'm never going to have it. I'm just going to live in it. Do you know what that really looks like in your life? To have a mighty God? Well, I can't tell you because it's too wonderful. It's more than I can understand. He is our wonderful counselor. And He is a mighty God. Let us pray. God, this morning, we confess that oftentimes we have just made you into what we think we need you to be. We've created all kinds of caricatures. We have named you all kinds of different things. We have chased after you in so many different ways, forgetting that a mighty God is with us. Lord, this morning, let us sit and worship. Your repetitiveness to Isaiah said, holy, holy, holy. Lord, let our image be created in you. Not you created in us. It is in Jesus' name that we ask these things. Amen.